Hi, my name's Emily, and this is my channel, The Redheaded Ravenclaw. Today I'm finally doing my wrap-up for my 5-star predictions, and so I'm going to just go ahead and jump in and let you guys know what I actually ended up rating all of the 10 books that I put on my 5-star predictions video, and it ended up going okay, so let's get started. The first book on my list was Anger is a Gift by Oshiro, and I ended up giving this book 4 stars. This book is about a boy who has a lot of anxiety, and he is dealing with just kind of like the backlash of police brutality in his city, and his father was killed in an act of police violence. It was a wrong place at the wrong time kind of situation. And the boy, his name is Moss, he is just kind of trying to make it through life, and all of these horrible things keep happening in his world, and he's trying to learn how to fight those things while also battling his anxiety. And this book was so difficult to read. I was feeling sick to my stomach for most of the time reading it. It deals with a lot of really difficult topics, and it was very powerful. I wouldn't not recommend this book because it has a really strong message, and it is very poignant for events that have been occurring in the U.S. Over the last several years, and it's just a really thought-provoking story about racial profiling, police brutality, things like that. I did enjoy the friendship aspects of this book. I enjoyed hearing these young people, I think they're teenagers and 17-ish, stand up for their rights and stand up for who they are as people. And it definitely packs a punch, and it really hits hard. So I understand the merit of this book, but my reading experience was not enjoyable, and I think I talked about it in the month that I read this book. But yeah, it was really tough to read. I'm making it sound really negative. It was a very powerful book. I just didn't enjoy my experience reading, and that's why I docked it a point. And there were also just some things that I felt like the book was too long, and other things like that. So anyways, yeah, 4 stars. Next on my list is Lair of Dreams by Libba Bray. This is the second book in the Diviners series, and this series is about Evie O'Neal and some other people who are diviners who kind of have different abilities. Evie can touch objects and read their history, especially the history of the person that the object belongs to. And in the sequel, we get to learn more about some of the other diviners and some of the other characters, and it gets more into dream territory, which is why it's called Lair of Dreams. I liked this one a lot, but I didn't end up liking it as much as I liked the diviners, so I ended up giving it 4 stars. I don't want to go too much into the details because I don't want to spoil it, but it wasn't about the characters who I thought it was going to be about, which didn't really hinder it because I really liked some of the plot lines where it went, but I didn't feel like it was as spooky as the first one, and so it ended up just being 4 stars for me. I did really love the third book, Before the Devil Breaks You, and I'm so excited to read the 4th and final book, King of Crows, really soon. Number 3 is On the Come Up by Angie Thomas, and I ended up giving this book 4 stars as well. This is about a girl named Bray, and she wants to become a rapper, and she's kind of under the spotlight of her dad, who was an underground rapper who was killed, and people keep comparing Bray to her father, and it's all about her trying to make a name for herself, trying to make a statement, and she has a song that gets leaked, and it kind of has a negative message towards her school and things like that, and so she gets some backlash for that. I enjoyed this one, but not as much as I enjoyed The Hate You Give, and I think that's because in The Hate You Give there were more like references, like pop culture references that I directly related to, because in that one it was more like Harry Potter, and in this one it was more like Star Wars and things like that. So but Angie Thomas's writing is incredible. I always love reading books by her, and I think that this book was also really powerful and packed a really great message, and just showing that you have to stand up for yourself and be able to defend yourself when it matters. And there were really great friendships in this book as well, and it just kind of gave highlight to lives of African American teenagers and different things like that in the context of the U.S. So I really enjoyed it. I loved listening to the audiobook, and I will definitely continue to read more Angie Thomas books in the future. Number 4, and the lowest rated one that I gave on this 5-star predictions list, is Thunderhead by Neal Shusterman. This is the sequel to Scythe in the Arc of the Scythe series, and this series is about a world where we have conquered death in natural forms. Nobody dies of old age or sickness or anything like that anymore. So in order to keep the population down, we have scythes who are hired to glean people. And in the first book, we follow Citra and Rowan, who are apprentices to scythes, and they are training to become scythes. And it left off on kind of a cliffhanger in the first book, and so I was really excited to pick this one up. I gave Scythe 4 stars, and then I ended up giving Thunderhead 3 stars. I just felt that this book was too long, and also that there were things that were happening that were supposed to be shocking and exciting and surprising, and I was not moved by them at all. Like, I did not care. And I feel like I should have liked the new characters' plotline, but I also didn't really care about that either. So I was really quite disappointed by this one, and I'm interested to finish reading this series. I'm gonna read The Toll and see where it ends up, but I was really expecting this one to be 5 stars, and it just really let me down. Number 5 on my list is Dress Codes for Small Towns by Courtney Stevens, and this book is about a group of 6 friends, and they accidentally set fire to their youth room at church, and the main character, Billy's father, is like the pastor at the church, and he receives some backlash for this. And so they have to do, the friend group has to do some community service to help repay for the damages and stuff to the church. And in the meantime, they're also working to save a fair type event that goes on in their community. And that doesn't even really seem like a great synopsis of this book, because honestly, really, it's just about this friendship group, like, experiencing life together, and the main character kind of learning about herself and learning how to decide what she wants. And I just really connected with Billy. I learned a lot about myself through reading this book, and was able to connect to Billy on a really deep level. I loved the friendship stuff. I loved the different interactions that they had and the different choices that they made, and it was just like, I don't even know how to talk about it. Ever since I've read it, I've struggled to talk about it, and I really want to reread it, because I read it in ebook format, and in that format I tend to forget a lot of details. So I really want to read it physically and kind of annotate it and make notes of what I really loved about it, because I did end up giving it 5 stars. It really touched me, and it made me emotional, and I just, it's a story that I think about and I want to keep with me as a reminder of, like, discovering who you are, who I am, etc., and just, like, being okay with, like, questioning yourself. Anyways, I loved it so much, and it was the first 5-star book on this list, so yay for that. Number 6 on my list is Vicious by V.E. Schwab. This is about Victor and Eli, who are in college, and for their thesis they decide to study extraordinaries, which is a phenomenon where people who have experienced near-death experiences can come back with certain abilities. And in order to test out their theories on this, they decide to try to become extraordinaries themselves. And through doing this, they end up having this feud, and they are separated for about 10 years, and Victor goes to prison, and Eli is just kind of doing other things. And we go back and forth between dual timelines of when they're in college and when it's 10 years later and Victor has just escaped from prison. And I love this book so much because these characters are so morally gray. That's something I discovered in 2019 that I really love to read about, is morally gray characters. I loved the dynamics of like the stakes just felt very high throughout this book in terms of the stakes of the extraordinaries that exist and what each of the former friends are going to do in order to achieve their desired goals that they each have that differ from each other. And I really liked Victor as a character. I really liked some of the side characters. I'm really, really excited to read Vengeful and see if that one will live up to the hype, not necessarily the hype, but like live up to how good this one was. I did give this 5 stars. I loved it, and I will definitely reread this in the future. And yeah, it's such an interesting concept as well. I don't think I've read anything like this, and I would love to read more characters that are like Victor, kind of like the Kazbrecker type. I lump them together sort of, but yeah, I loved this. 5 out of 5 stars. Number 7 was Nevermoor by Jessica Townsend, and I think this was probably the first book I read on this list a while ago, like several months ago. And this is about a girl named Morrigan Crow who is cursed to die on her 11th birthday. And right before this curse is about to come true, she is whisked away by an interesting man named Jupiter North, and she gets the opportunity to participate in these trials in order to get a spot in this school for these people who have abilities in their world. And this book was so, so good. Like, I haven't continued the series yet, but I definitely will do that soon, because this book is just so magical, and it is reminiscent of Harry Potter. Like, people have said that, but it definitely stands on its own. Like, it is its own entity. It is dark. There are topics that, don't normally get discussed in middle grade that often. And it was funny. There were very intriguing characters. I loved the different spooky elements that were thrown in there, and I loved it. It was 5 stars. I'm so thrilled that I read it, and I'm going to definitely continue on with the series, like I said, and I'm very, very thrilled to see where it's going to go. Number 8 on this list is Mooncakes by Wendy Zhu and Suzanne Walker. This is about a witch and a werewolf. The witch's name is Nova, and she lives with her grandma's aunts. I can't remember. Anyways, they have like a little tea/bookstore, and the werewolf, whose name is Tam, is coming back into town after some weird things happen, and they get to reunite their friendship. And it is just a really beautiful story of friendship. Nova is hard of hearing, and Tam is non-binary, and there's just some really great representation throughout in this graphic novel. The artwork is stunning. Let me see if I can there's just like beautiful pictures of the people, and the coloring is really beautiful, and I just love this story. Again, it's kind of about being okay with who you are, and there's magical shenanigans and evil people, so it was just a wholesome, really great book that I kind of devoured in one sitting. It deals with some harder topics like identity, death of a family member. I don't remember all of the different hard topics off the top of my head, but it was so cute, so powerful, and I will definitely be rereading this over the years around Halloween, probably, because it is kind of like a little spooky-ish vibe. It came out in October, I think. But anyways, I loved it. 5 out of 5 stars. Number 9 on this list was The Raven Boys by Maggie Stiefvater. And this is about a group of friends who have this obsession with finding a dead Welsh king, and Blue Ivy is not her name. Blue Sergeant is a girl who lives with a bunch of psychics. Her family is psychics, and she doesn't have really any psychic abilities, but she serves as an amplifier to the psychics, and she partners up with this group of friends, and they just kind of go on these adventures in order to try to find this king. And if they find the king, it's rumored that the king will grant them a wish. And I only ended up giving The Raven Boys 4 stars because at first I read the entire Raven Cycle series in September. I read one book a week for the Raven Cycle read along, and at first I felt Maggie Stiefvater's writing was too pretentious. And it was kind of hard to follow what was happening because of that. But as I continued on with the series, I recognized that the pretentious writing really fits for the characters in the series, and I grew to really enjoy it. I think this first book, I really, really liked it, but it wasn't it was not 5 stars. I think that it was just a little, because it was confusing, because it was, I don't want to say, holier than thou, but that's kind of, the impression I got from the writing and stuff like that. I guess that's where the pretentious stuff comes. But, I just had a hard time connecting at first, but once I finished that one, I was like, okay, I'm ready to move on to the next one, and the next, and the next. So yeah, I really like the series overall, and I think that it is definitely rereadable. I'm currently reading Call Down the Hawk, which is the first in the spin-off series about Ronan, and it's really, really good as well. So I have an attachment to this series and fond memories because of doing this whole read-along in 1 month and reading the whole series, but yeah, it only ended up being 4 stars, which is okay. That's still a really good book. And the final book on my list is Sorcery of Thorns by Margaret Rogerson, and this ended up being my second favorite book of the year. I absolutely loved it. This is about Elizabeth, who is learning to become a librarian, sort of. In this world, their library has grimoires, which are these, books that can turn into monsters because of this dark magic, and she gets into some trouble for trying to defeat a grimoire when she's technically not allowed to yet, and so she ends up having to work alongside Nathaniel, who is a sorcerer, and Nathaniel kind of convinces Elizabeth to change her opinions about sorcerers because librarians and sorcerers don't get along because of the dark magic. And it ends up being kind of a romance between them, and a really, really interesting and beautiful story with just some interesting magic. I just like have such an attachment to this because it reminds me of Strange the Dreamer, with the library setting and kind of the tone. And if you don't know, I'm going to school to be a librarian right now. I love reading about libraries and librarians. So this just really spoke to me, and I am in love with Silas. He's a demon, and I am a huge fan of demon magic and like the lore behind how demons interact in our world and how they make deals and stuff like that. It was also really great timing because was watching the first season of Black Butler, and Silas from this book and Sebastian from Black Butler remind me a lot of each other. And so honestly, this book, a lot of it is probably just like perfect timing, and like because it caters directly to interests that I have. But I just loved it so much. It was a really easy 5 stars. I listened to it on audiobook, and I got the physical book for Christmas, so I'm really excited to read it and annotate it soon. But yeah, I loved it so much. Alright, there you have it. That was my 5-star prediction video. I ended up giving 5 of them 5 stars, which is pretty good. I got half of them right, so I'm definitely going to be doing this again and choosing 10 more books that I think I'll be giving 5 stars. And if you have any recommendations for me based on the books that I did end up giving 5 stars, or even the ones that I gave 4 stars, I'm interested to hear those from you guys. So the next video that you'll see from me is probably going to be my December and January wrap up, because I haven't done that yet and it's getting into February, so I need to get a jump on that. But thank you guys for watching, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye!